Hi, everybody. Welcome to Mark's Backyard Birds, the December wild bird update. And yes, behind us, we have a very cold scene. And I wish it was that cold right now in Kansas City. Yes, I am Mark McKellar. I'm the owner of the Backyard Bird Center in Kansas City. I'm a wildlife biologist who fell in love with birds many years ago and have been fortunate enough to be able to make a career out of studying birds and, of course, now selling birds and selling bird seed, bird feeders, things like that. And I always want to let people know right off the bat, right, that we are in Kansas City. So, right here in the heart of the country. So, as we're talking and answering questions and addressing topics, my timeline is right here in the center of the country. You guys to the north may have already experienced some of the stuff, and you guys to the south may be delayed a bit. So, but we take questions from all regions of the country and of course, including Canada, North America. You guys are just wonderful followers, and we really appreciate you tuning in. And tonight, we're going to talk about bird feeding, the things to get it takes to get birds this time of year to your yard. We're going to talk a little bit about the food. We're going to talk about suet a bit. It was a big topic here lately, so I thought I'd address that. And then we're going to a couple of bird watching things toward the end, some identification conundrums. I always try to cover something like that for the birders in the crowd, so that go out beyond just their backyard. So we're going to talk a little bit about dabbling ducks versus diving ducks, but not real involved, just the basics of it. So let's see, people are starting to check in. Hi, Steve. Well, Steve, you're always a regular every live we do. Thank you for joining in. Yep, Melanie is in the adjacent room, and she'll be yelling stuff out at me, I'm sure. Uh, and here comes my Carrie. Carrie's my store manager there at the Backyard Bird Center. Uh, she's it lives not too far away, so right down the road here, and it's been out on with our bird hike this past Sunday. It was great to have her and Kurt. There's Kurt and their partner, and they were both on the trip this last Sunday. We went out to Smithville Lake and saw ducks and loons and my favorite bird. We actually rode up to a conservation area and saw a loggerhead shrike, which is a real joy to see since their numbers are disappearing for sure. Kathy Sparks, another real regular, thank you, from Indiana. And absolutely. I'm glad to help. I love doing these videos, and I'm glad you guys enjoy them. It is absolutely a pleasure to do them and have see such enthusiasm. That's like I told Carrie on Sunday. For a lot of people that were on the bird hike, they'd never seen a shrike before, and there were high fives and people celebrating. And I love that. I love that level of enthusiasm and excitement that people get when they discover something new in nature and birding is just a great way to do that. Let's see, we have Larry from Purdue University. Welcome in, Larry. Uh, Steel Monkey from Cape Cod. Welcome in. And let's see, we have Drake G Drake from Springfield, Missouri, just down the road. Well, more than just down the road. It's about a good 3.5 hours south of us, but love Springfield. A lot of great birds down in that area, especially spring migration in the Springfield area is wonderful. Love that area down there. So, Kurt, yep, absolutely. The butcher bird. I've talked about my loggerhead shrike before, and I fell in love with it in college, and just fascinated by this bird that probably ounce for ounce is as fierce a bird in the bird kingdom, and they are for a bird that's more like a robin than a hawk. What it's able to do, it's pretty amazing. And the name butcher bird comes from the way they kill like mice and things that are to hit them and stun them and fly up and impale them on a thorn or a barbed wire fence, and that earned them the nickname butcher bird many years ago. Hi, Shirley, checking in from Texas. Excellent, excellent. Brian over in Leavenworth, and you'll see some Brian Voorhees pictures tonight, like you usually do. a great photographer. He sends me pictures all the time. They're very, very useful. Thank you, Brian. Yes, just over the state line over in Kansas. Absolutely. So, all right. You guys are checking in. We'll continue to welcome you in as we go. And remember, questions or I always look forward to your questions. And I've just got some topics that we're going to address. And if they generate a question here and there, feel free to type them in, and we'll get to them and try to keep up with them. There you go. So. All right. If you watch me on a regular basis, you know when it comes to attracting birds into your yard, that I am a huge bird food, water, and shelter person, and I advocate water, and especially a source of unfrozen water, clean unfrozen water. So thought I would lead with that. This time, if you haven't yet gotten out your bird bath deicers or your heated bird baths, if you live in much of the country, it has been fairly mild so far. So it's not as important early on this year as it has been in some years, but for sure, heated bird baths are critical. And not only are we need, obviously birds have to have water to survive. They have to drink. They have to hydrate. They also have to preen and clean their feathers, and they need a source of water to do that. And this is a flock of cedar waxwings. And the reason I chose this picture tonight, is because it shows the other part of the importance of water for you as someone who loves watching birds and loves attracting birds to your yard. Water brings in a source of birds that normally don't feed at bird feeders, like cedar waxwings, very much fruit eaters, but they have to have water and they have to have unfrozen water. So adding a bird bath or a water feature to your landscaping or to your deck or to your yard, you will attract more than just the traditional seed-eating birds, as well as providing that invaluable source that all animals need to survive. So beautiful cedar waxwing shut. I love the yellow tail, the tip of the tail, yellow there. I always say they look like somebody's taken them and dunked them in yellow paint. They are gorgeous. They have the chartreuse bellies and the black mask, and they raise their crest or have their crest laid down. They can do that, and you must always see them in flocks. So the benefits of providing water for birds is attracting some birds that don't necessarily eat seed and come to your bird feeders. So, hi, Sandy from Kankakee, Illinois. And Denise, you're checking in from Washington State, one of our West Coast people who's dedicated to the channel. We welcome you in, guys. I know I'm not sure because I know Kurt's my amateur weatherman here, but I'm not sure what your weather's been like a lot. I mean, I see photos from on television from certain parts of the country, and I see there is snow in certain areas. And it's been mild this way, but I'm not sure exactly, kind of your weather conditions. But I think what we're going to talk about is going to apply for sure. I've seen a long range forecast for our area that they're thinking in January is when our weather pattern is going to change. Right through Christmas, I know they're calling for highs in the 50s every day. So we're not locked into any really cold pattern yet in this part of the world. Let's see. Flickers to the pond today. Had a half dozen robins. Yeah. Oh, yeah. That sharpsin's been hunting your yard. I saw that picture today. Those those birds can gang up on him. And those that was a juvenile sharpsin, and they don't know the game very well yet, and they sit out in the open. Whereas the adults tend to be much better at the ambushing. That's for sure. Sandy said they were at 50 degrees today. So, yeah, it's been pretty mild, and the feeders have been fairly slow. In my yard, and this is not uncommon, but it's going to lead to my next slide, and that is the goldfinches are primarily what I have. And you've heard me talk about my yard in winter, and it's only going to be my yard for another month or so as we are moving, but not too far away, just down the actually closer to our store. And we'll have bird feeders set up there, and I'm going to try to document my thought processes of setting up feeders in that yard for the first time, and I have a video about excuse me about that. But the reason I chose this slide is this year, High Frontier, we are the Finch forecast called for what they believe to be a good pine siskin infusion into the lower 48s this year. So I thought we often do get confusion. People call in about the pine siskins because they think they're maybe female goldfinches, or they think they're juvenile goldfinches, things like that. So I thought I would talk about them in a little bit. And that on the left, the first thing, of course, is that this is an American goldfinch on the left of the screen in winter plumage. The bright yellow is gone for the season, and we won't start seeing them molt back in them till March or so. So this is what an adult goldfinch looks like in the winter months. Very olive drab with some lighter yellow highlights. But if you note the shape of the bird, and you see goldfinches a lot probably where you are, the shape of the bill, everything, pine siskins, which is the one bird on the upper right in this picture, are structurally, size, shape, size, bill, everything, almost identical to goldfinches. So the difference, of course, is the stripes. And look, you can see all the stripes on that bird on the upper right, feeding on the finch. Same finch feeder as the goldfinch on the left. It's just a different picture, but same feeder, same finch mix in there. But the amount of striping on the pine siskin should alert you right away that it's a different bird. And notice the yellow in the wings and the yellow in the tail, especially whenever they spread their wings. You'll see that yellow in those primaries, and then the tail feathers, and so it really alerts you to their presence with the stripes and then those yellow highlights. The bird on the bottom right is a common red pole, which has no yellow in it, and it has that little red cap and that bicolored yellow bill. We do not see these birds very much in the Kansas City area south. This year, I don't think I've heard of any of them just to our north yet. But you guys who live well to the north may have red poles in the area. But what we generally see them when they do show up here in the Kansas City region, it's usually not till maybe even January. Some years that they actually get pushed down gradually, and they end up down here, and they spend maybe a month or so down here. And we're always on the alert for them, because they get people excited. Bird watchers loving that, seeing something different. Well, red poles are a really good backyard bird in the Kansas City region. So up where you guys are up in Minnesota and Wisconsin and those northern tier states, it may not be that exciting for you because you probably see them every winter at your feeders. So the Finch conundrum, just thought I would cover that because they're talking about having a lot of pine siskins this year, and they're very irregular here. Some winters we have tons, some winters we have none. Last winter was none. And so this year, looking forward to see the siskins, and they are very hungry birds. All right. A birder reported pine siskins South St. Louis area. I also saw a report from St. Joseph, which is north of us, the other day. So yeah, they're going to start showing up and all around the state. I expect to start getting calls from customers and hopefully at my feeders, because I usually have them whenever they show up. So we're keeping an eye out for those. All right. Thank you, Sandy. And a reminder that if you like the videos, please give them a thumbs up, a like, and you ever get a chance to share them, please do that. That really helps us out. And you guys leaving comments, that helps us with that algorithm as well. So thank you, Sandy. I really appreciate you plugging that in there. So, okay. So we had water. And we got the Finch mix here. It's a little bit about food. We're going to talk more about food, but next week I'm going to add a Carrie picture in here. This is an older version of her brush pile a few years back, but her yard was very, very open. So she constructed a brush pile to help the birds feel safe in her yard and visit her feeders more regularly rather than having to cross open so much space. And this is, a message tonight is food, water, and shelter. Always a topic with shelter. If you don't have enough shelter and the birds are not coming to your feeders like you want them to, building a brush pile is a really good idea, especially in winter. But you can this she did a magnificent job with this brush pile. She really put a lot of effort into it, and it worked really, really well. And some people, a brush pile can be as simple as your old Christmas tree. And this is another message right now. If you have a live Christmas tree, and when you go to get rid of that Christmas tree, take it out to your bird feeder station, drive a stake in the ground, and tie your Christmas tree to that stake, and that is a great brush pile. It provides terrific cover for birds. They escape from predators. Like I said, it makes them feel safe. When you're feeding, that they got closer to maybe your trees that are a little bit further away. So the brush piles are really great additions. And most people, we get this problem a lot for people who come in, especially people with new construction homes or in a new development where they just plowed down all the trees, put up the houses, and planted little sprigs of trees around, and it takes years for them to grow. This is a message that we give people a lot, and that is, until you provide some cover for those birds, your activity, your feeder is probably going to be pretty slow. Absolutely, they've got to have escape cover, and that's just like Curtin was saying earlier. He had a sharp-shinned hawk hunting his feeders in the backyard. Well, having a brush pile close to those feeders makes those birds feel much more confident, and they can get back to that escape cover away from that aerial predator quickly. So it is a really, really good addition to any backyard during the season. So now the next food I was going to move to at this time of year, which is really important, is, where is it? Where is it? Mealworms. There they are. Okay. Ooh. It turned out black and white whenever I imported it. That's really unusual. But mealworms, I'm getting a lot of questions about those right now when it comes to feeding the mealworms in winter. And, we have live mealworms and dried mealworms. Live mealworms, when it's really, really cold, die pretty quickly. So, you can put them out, and people do put them out during the winter months, especially if you live in milder areas. But dried mealworms are perfectly fine. One of the warning, they always say, what I've read about dried mealworms, of course, with them being dehydrated, is that you want to make sure that you have a source of water when you're feeding mealworms as well, because the birds will take in water to help with the digestion of the dried mealworms. And that, I think almost everybody that I talk to has water, and that's why I always leave the water. But dried mealworms can be mixed in with your birdseed. And I just did a program this past week, posted it on feeding bluebirds in winter. And one of the things I talked about are the mealworms, providing mealworms for them. And I provide mealworms two ways in the winter. I have an old Oriole feeder that has an open dish in it that I'm not putting jelly in this time of year. And I fill that dish up with dried mealworms. And then I also take dried mealworms and I mix it in my open fly-through feeder with boardwalk blend or nutberry, whatever I have in it at the time. And I mix dried mealworms in there. And I see the Carolina wren and the chickadees picking them up out of those mixtures and on the bowl. And then the bluebirds come in. Once those bluebirds, if you've got bluebirds in your area, and they come for the water in your backyard, they see those other birds eating at the bird feeders, they'll go over and check it out because they're used to feeding those interspecific flocks, in which in winter they travel around together. And chickadees are usually the core species of that. Well, other birds know that chickadees are so smart and so good at finding food that they'll be led to food if they follow them around, and they do, and it leads them to your bird feeders. And so the bluebirds learn to feed at the Finch feeders on the sunflower chips. They learn to, of course, eat the mealworms in there. And then on the program the other night, I talked about our mixture called Mark's Bluebird and Friends, and it's a mixture of some small peanut pieces, sunflower hearts, medium-sized, smaller broken ones, some dried mealworms in there, and suet nuggets. And I'll put a link to that video so you can watch that if you missed that. Those are all good things. And I call it bluebirds and friends because other birds like mockingbirds and Carolina wrens will eat some of those other things. They may not, they don't have the seed cracking ability to open up a sunflower seed. So providing the hull of stuff that's in that bluebirds and friends will help track some of those birds, which is always fun to have those extra birds. All right, let's see. Bird bass or water features near some kind of cover for visitors to go into green and seek shelter. That's exactly right. A bird bass out in the wide open is dangerous for birds. I mean, because predators can catch them there, and once, especially if you create a water feature like I've got in my backyard, or Ruth has in her backyard, and Kurt built one this year. Once that vegetation starts to grow up around it, gets a little thicker, a little taller, then you'll get a lot more birds visiting it. But when it's wide open, it's fairly slow at first, usually because birds have to be cautious in coming in. That's a good point. Let's see, Sandy, 2 Carolina wrens come to my dream. Right, absolutely. Those Carolina wrens are amazing, and they will find insects and that find bugs. Yeah, if you do have regular bluebirds, the even on cold days, they're probably not out there long enough. They will eat every single one of them. There's no doubt. Hi, Stever. Your thoughts on water deep enough to bathe in bad and extreme cold? No, I mean, okay. A good bird bath is a shallow bird bath. So I believe as much as you can possibly do with your bird baths, make sure there's multiple depths of water available for the different sized birds. But birds will bathe in winter. They have to do that. Now, I've never known of a case of a bird freezing to death because they bathe. They get in, they shake off, they preen the feather, and if it's extremely cold, and I mean really brutally cold, then probably they're not going to bathe. They're going to wait for a little bit more moderate water. But at bird bath de-icers can keep. They can keep up with to about 20 below is what most of them on the market will do. So if it gets any colder than that, then I don't think the icers are not going to work anyway. So they have to have the hydration, so they will drink from it. And people talk about, well, I have a creek or I live on a lake and things like that. That's very dangerous for birds a lot of times, just because the shore, the water lakes and things freeze from the shore out. And so the further that open water is out in the lake, again, that becomes more dangerous for the birds to have to go out there and try to get a drink of water. So Sandy's comment about the bird bass close to cover is a key, and that's for sure. So the whole thing, it's been that belief forever that that if birds they go to a bird bath and then they land on a bird feeder that has metal perches, they'll freeze on there. I've never seen it documented ever. You remember, birds' feet are covered in scales, and scales repel water. And so as soon as they fly off from there, the water is off their feet. That repels it, just like reptile scales. No, I've never seen a bird or any documentation of a bird frozen onto a bird feeder. Now, I've seen mourning doves in an ice storm. I've seen their tails freeze to the ground because they stay in one place too long in the freezing rain, and when they get to fly off, their tail stays there behind them. But no, I've never seen the feet freezing onto it. Hi, Joshua from Southwest Michigan. I bet it's pretty cold up there. Getting into, I know you guys get it cold before we do, for sure. Yeah, Steel Monkey. That peanuts are. I mean, peanuts are such an invaluable source of oil and fat. And remember, what birds are eating for is to generate body heat. Nutrition is one thing, but they need to eat because they're warm-blooded like you and I. And so, we take in food. That's what's keeping our body temperature at 98.6 degrees. And birds' temperatures are around 105, somewhere in there. And it's that food that they're taking in. And I guess why nutritional value of food is so important. And peanuts are very high nutritionally, and also sunflower chips are good as well. But the nutritional supplement in the winter months for for birds for a lot of nutrition is suet, and we get a lot of suet questions this time of year. This is a suet cake up close because I wanted to show the difference between a good quality suet cake and a not so good quality suet cake. This is Peanut Treat, which is our best seller in the winter, and it's my favorite suet cake that we sell in the store. And that is it's beef fat, peanuts, and tree nuts. That's it. There's no bird seed or fillers in here. And this is a picture of a cheaper cake. And the if you look, there's sunflower seeds in here. There's a whole lot of cracked corn in here, and there's millet seeds in here. So this is a suet cake that's had a cheap bag. It's made with a cheap bag of bird seed in it. And what that does is that takes away the space for quality ingredients. And like the suet, the beef fat, the internal body cavity fat of a cow, that fat is really important to birds in winter. And again, it like peanuts, it converts to energy very fast, converts to heat. And then beef. Now, if you and I eat it, our cholesterol level will go way up. But in birds, they need that energy, especially in the cold weather. And the suet season is just really getting going. It was pretty slow to start this year. A lot of acorns this year. It just always is, just natural food. But usually December, mid-December is whenever the suet season really starts to kick in for us. But during January, February, whenever the weather gets cold. So a not good cake, why is this cake $1.79 and this cake $2.49? Then it's usually, if you look at the suet cake and look at it, you can see that cheap birdseed in, whereas and read the ingredients. But if it's just got peanuts in it, maybe some fruit in it, and the beef fat, that's what you're looking for. All right. Oh, I'm getting behind here. That's it. It's one of my Quebec people. You're right. My 50-watt bird bath deicer had some problems at minus 15 Celsius. Yes. When it comes to bird bath deicers and the strength of them, what happens is when they gets cold down in the negative temperatures, it can only keep just around the heater open. Then it'll be frozen all around the outside. That's why when people buy a bird deicer and they're putting in their bird bath, I try to ask them what kind of bird bath, because if they're counting on that bird bath deicer to keep like a concrete bird bath from cracking, that's not a safe thing, because in the really cold temperatures, it'll still freeze and thaw out around the perimeter of it. Whereas a bird bath that has the heater built into the bowl, the whole bowl will stay open, and that's a much more effective way to provide water for birds. But I understand people wanted to be economical and use the deicer into an existing bird bath. But if you value that bird bath and it's made out of a material that is vulnerable to freezing and thawing, it's pretty risky. Yeah, we did talk about that. Mario emailed me this week about that. Hi, Jordan from Pittsburgh. My feeders have been extremely slow until today. I was only getting a red belly woodpecker and a couple of goldfinches for a couple of weeks, still waiting for my squirrels and titmice. They're coming. Believe me, it has been slow. And that's, I had one customer that emailed me that had bought like 3 or 4 bags of birdseed on our sale that was back in November, and it has been slow. And she's like, "Did I buy too much?" Well, I guarantee you that they're going to eat it. It's coming. It's just slower. And one of the things that in this industry that I have seen over the last many years, 20, whatever, I've done it for almost 40 years now. But if it is slow in the fall, it's usually busy in the spring. It just seems to be a fairly good rule. When the bird seed, once they feed and then get later into the spring, they're eating seed. They've depleted the natural food supplies, and bird seed does very, very well later on. But it's different year to year. I can't say that for every part of the world, but I just can tell you that that's a pattern that I have seen over my 40 years of doing this. So. Joshua, that is actually one of my topics that we're going to talk about Christmas bird counts. There are several Christmas bird counts scheduled around the area. Unfortunately, for someone who's in a retail business that his busiest season is Christmas, it's very hard for me anymore to do Christmas bird counts, and I hate that because I love doing Christmas bird counts. But yes, there are several. Your local Audubon chapters around should have a schedule. And where did I have that? Oh, this is Carrie's picture. This was supposed to remind me to talk about Christmas bird counts. So since you've led me there, I think I'll go ahead and talk about that. And the National Audubon Society has done these Christmas bird counts for, is it 100 years now? Volunteers get together and they have count circles all around the country. And wherever you live, there will be somebody who's running a count circle near you, and you can volunteer and you show up on whatever day that count is. I know the Smithville Lake count, Trimble count's what it's called, is the Saturday before Christmas. Of course, that's one of my busiest days of the year, so I obviously can't do that. So but you get together and you go out and you count birds all day. In your area, they usually divide the count circle up into regions, and you get assigned a region. And usually there's 3 or 4 or 5 of you. It depends on how many people you have doing the count. They're wonderful, wonderful ways to, we call it citizen science. And that's how you can help give back to birds. And they use this data from year to year to year. And I've always said, the biology part of that is, you're not trying to say that there's 1,100,422 goldfinches. What they're doing with that data is they're looking for trends, and our population is consistently going down or going up, or they're remaining stable. That's what they can do, where they can compile all these numbers together, and it is very, very helpful to scientists to have people out there doing this counting, and it's great. I've got a link already down in the description below, and I have people asking me all the time about what's your address, what's your email, and it's all in that description below the video. And there's links to the online store, and usually I put links in there of what topics we talked about tonight. Like I do have a link to the Audubon Society's Christmas bird count, so you can go to that site and then enter your zip code, and it should bring you up chapters near you where they are doing Christmas bird counts, and you can contact someone there. So the information is down there below the video, all that contact information. So, all right. San Jordan, I was glad to send you a picture. Yeah, people wanting to volunteer. They're giving away their squirrels. Yeah, they can be very damaging. David, yeah, and the word count's still way down, but about 10 days, safflower niger, middle of ground spread, nothing. The heat breath is not cost effective. Yeah, it's been slow, right? And it has been I'm getting that from coast to coast. I mean, if anybody can chime in and tell me that they've got birds galore at their feeders right now, I'd be interested to know what part of the country in, because overall it's just been a very slow season. Last year started out pretty slow, then picked up really, really well. So I hope that the heated bath is not cost effective. They don't. I mean, they're like a light bulb. Is basically, especially if your heated bird bath has a thermostat in it and goes on and off, so it's not burning energy when it's not needed. But the alternative for heated bird baths, of course, is taking out water constantly to keep it open. If you're in an area where it gets that cold and stays cold like that. If you're living in an area that does not have a ton of cold weather, it's only cold at night, you can dump the ice out in the morning and put fresh water in it. There's no reason to invest in a heated bird bath. That's right. All right, let's see. We are doing Christmas bird count in Kankakee County. Excellent. Absolutely. I went to see the specs of the beautiful pedestal heated bird bath. It is too short for here. Lots of snow. Oh, boy. I bet that's true. Now, that's something we don't have to deal with. the height. And then now, where I'm a new house I'm moving to, there's got to be the bird bath for the deck, and I'm not sure about what I can do in the yard. But yeah, sometimes they are lower to the ground. Excellent. People get do. I'd love to hear people doing those. Uh, the uh, the Christmas bird counts. I use a cheap plastic pond liner, cheap pump, and cattle tub deicer. That's what most of them are slim down cattle deicers, cattle trough deicers. Yep. A higher watt deicer, yeah, 150 watts. I mean, we sell them up to 500 watts, 250 watts, and it just depends on your region as to what you need. And like you can get by with a lower wattage heater, like in the heat a bird bath, if it's spread out over the whole bowl. That tends to be effective versus maybe even a little bit stronger one just in a small concentrated area like a trough heater. That's Kurt trying to give away his squirrels. Yep. Starlings come and get most of the suet that I put out, no matter what I do to make it harder for them. They are, I haven't seen a single, let me say this out loud. I haven't seen a single starling in my feeder yet this year. But they are coming, and our starlings tend to get the worst when the cold weather gets here. And the really cold weather, I'm talking about single digits. And I think that's when they come in for the heated bird bath and also the suet. And suspending your feeders upside down, that can slow them down. But really, unless you have a really well-designed caged suet feeder, you can't keep them away from it. And when you have the caged suet feeder, a lot of times your red bellies and flickers and things can't feed from it either. So it's a mixed bag. I wish there was a type of suet they didn't like, but that's not the case. Good. In South Dakota. Tried to have. I'm curious, Andre, do your goldfinches stay all winter, or do they tend to move out when it gets harsher? I'm kind of curious that. Yeah. Yes, they do that. And starlings do that too. So yeah, you have to be able to clean it out. That's for sure. They'll poop in the water. Yes, absolutely. Like to take the squirrels. They do have personality. I'll give you that. Yeah, they do. Blue jays famously do cache a lot of acorns and nuts and even whole kernels of corn from your feed and things like that. They are big at storing that. Wow, 50 mourning doves. What? That's a lot. Yeah, yeah. They are. Unless it's a really really harsh winter, they'll stay. That number will stick around. Sometimes they'll move when there's absolutely mild winters. No snow here yet. 5 above Celsius and sunny today in London, Ontario. Been to Kansas, and my husband's cousin lives in Dodge City. Look, thank you so much for joining in, Carol. Absolutely. So down in Alabama, the feeders are pretty active. Chickadees, titmice, house finches. You got a good list. Yep. And the little brown-headed nuthatches. I absolutely love them. So you're getting good activity, Steve. That's good to hear. Yep. I know it's got to be mild. Any cool birds at our customers' feeders lately? I haven't had any reports at the feeders themselves, but we have red crossbills being seen in areas where there's some good pine cone crops that have good seed to them. So we've had, and they tend to show up at feeders eventually if they stick around all winter. So that's a good indication. They had we had a crazy Scott's Oriole show up again at the same bird feeders that it did last winter down in South Kansas City, which is a phenomenal bird, and and it's back at the same guy's bird feeders again. That's kind of crazy. Desert Southwest birds, but that's the coolest birds I've heard about. Actually, almost had a cardinal snatched by a Cooper's hawk. Yeah, excellent. That's exactly what those brush piles should be doing. And cardinals are a prime example of a bird that needs it. When you're that bright red, predators go after you all the time. Some stay, most move out. They're more normal. Yeah, at the moment. Yeah, Andre, and I think I get a lot of your birds. My goldfinch numbers are hovering around 20 to 30 right now, but in a typical winter in this yard, I will top out around 100 in the really harsh conditions. And I think most of those birds come from Nebraska and Dakotas and areas a bit north of us when it gets really harsh up there. Pittsburgh had a measly 14 inches of snow last year. Yep, dusting after 9 cents. Hope it's not a repeat. Jordan, this storm that we got 3.5 inches. Oh God, it's been 3 or 4 weeks ago. That day, over just to our west in Topeka, Kansas, they had 7 inches of snow that one day. Last winter, they had a total of 6. So it's El Nino year, and El Nino is so unpredictable. Sometimes for some areas it just means a lot of snow. Some that means no snow. Ugh. It's I do my snow and ice dance for it every day. Absolutely, you're right. Anywhere from 18 to 22 species during feeder watch. That's good. That's good. Yep, that shows some good diversity coming in there. Yeah, it's like lions at the water hole. Those predators, those coopers and sharpshins are going to hunt your feeders. That's for sure. Made myself a log suet feeder out of a maple log, and had a large last tray, and boy, did they love it. I drilled 6 holes in it, and absolutely. And to me, that's the best way to present suet is in a log feeder like that. And then I also did one on peanut butter and cornmeal mixture. You can put in those logs like that. Another winter offering, especially for wrens and mockingbirds and all the woodpeckers. And peanut butter is a high value food, but again, starlings love it. So it can be double edged there. I'm about at 100. I had a couple 20 purchase feeders. Nice. Absolutely. Talking about the goldfinches. Bought on a suet feeder last week, but it is so mild. Yep. It really is driving it. Absolutely. All right. So I want to move on to and play on the Christmas bird count picture here and talk about, I try to throw in some cool bird stuff here and there. And I'm going to talk about ducks for a little bit, and that is the difference between a dabbling duck and a diving duck. There are 2 basic kinds of ducks out there, and the dabbling ducks mallards are absolutely the classic example of that. And I love this picture because it shows you where the legs are on a dabbling duck. They're more centered on the body, and it makes them well suited for walking around out on the grass on the shore. But they're not made for going deep in the water. They feed by tipping up, and these are not ducks; these are swans, but they're the same thing. The swans, of course, have much longer necks and reach further down into the water. But dabbling ducks do this: they tip up, and they get aquatic vegetation, incrustation, things that are aquatic insects that are trying to winter down there under the water. But the dabbling ducks, are, and I can do whole programs on them, but we're not going to go into identifying a bunch of them. We're just kind of doing the physiological difference there. And that is, and usually dabbling ducks are fairly chunky for good sized birds. And they tip and they feed that way versus a diving duck. And if I had a picture of a diving duck up on land, it would be quite monumental because the term a duck out of water does come from the diving ducks. Because where this leg, we see where these legs are on this mallard, if you envision those legs about 3 to 4 inches further back on its body, and so its center of gravity is not good at all. So, but for you to be able to dive deep into the water and kick your legs and get you down to feed things in the deeper water off the bottom, and especially like mergansers, which are fish ducks, and loons, which are not technically ducks, but they are all deep diving birds. Their legs are positioned way back on their body for more leverage, so they can dive and kick and get deeper. But when they try to crawl up on land, they basically have to scoot on their bellies. So you'll never see a loon or This bird here, a canvasback, gorgeous bird. But their legs are very far back, and they have to nest very close to the edge of the water. And a lot of these birds, these deep diving birds, actually uh, nest on floating mats of grass or in clumps of grass. They just scoot up on it. They lay their eggs right on it, and they they stack up weeds to reeds to get the lay their eggs on it, and their eggs are usually funny shaped, like a lot of them are shaped like footballs, so that they don't go rolling off into the water. They settle down in the bottom of the wet matted grasses that make their nest. So very cool. It's just a small thing, but it's something you don't think about a lot of times. Is well, how are those birds able to dive? And you know, a lot of questions, like on Sunday when we were at Smithville Lake, seeing some of these diving ducks, goldeneye and common mergansers and common loons that would go under and stay under a long time. And I'm not sure how long they can do stay underwater. I'm sure the information is available. I just don't have it all memorized, but several minutes down there, and then it'll come up way away from where you saw them go under. So they're always fun, the diving ducks, and we don't get to see diving ducks hardly at all until now. The dabbling ducks come in earlier. They're here, but once the water starts to freeze up, the dabbling ducks move on. They go further south to spend a lot of the winter. Whereas diving ducks can stay around here if the water stays open in these deep diving lakes and stuff that they can dive in. So actually very cool. Dabbling ducks. This is a canvasback. It doesn't have the name duck in it, but that ski slope bill. Lots of examples. Like I said, I'll do a program on dabbling ducks versus diving ducks because there's a lot more detail to go into it. But thought that was just something quick. And if you're going to do Christmas bird counts, is something useful to have on your mind whenever you're out looking for birds and trying to identify them. Jordan says the Cardinals I have lately, I've had 9 goldfinches. Something. Yeah, my Cardinals are almost. Of course, I'm not here during the day, so they could be coming a lot more frequently than I'm seeing. But the Cardinals have been fairly scarce. Now, when we see Cardinals most numerously is in the evening. I always call them the 4 o'clock birds. When the shadows get long, the Cardinals come out to feed late in the day, fuel up, and then get into cover, so they're not exposed out in the sun. And during the day, if they can find food in the brushy cover areas that they like, they're safer there, and so they do, definitely, absolutely. Oh, and there's my manager right there. Yes, we do sell the suet logs. They're handmade by a gentleman here in Kansas City area, and he makes them for us, and we sell a lot of them. And Carrie's right. But if you're handy with tools and you can make it yourself, it is simple. And they just, when you look at one, you realize, if you've got the skills and the tools to do it, they're not that hard to make, for sure. All right, Mario, I had 2 blue jays injured in my smart bird feeders. One had a twisted leg that was useless, and the second one was closed fist-like foot. Poor fellows. I wonder what happened with that. Anything can happen, and injuries in bird feeders are very, very uncommon. I've had, over the 40 years of doing this, and, we've had where a bird's foot got down into the V of a hook, like a shepherd's hook, and got stuck down there and couldn't get out. That is a freak thing. I think I've had that twice in my career, that kind of situation. But freak things can happen. But boy, it is really uncommon, and that's unfortunate. I have 2 of those. Last one, I have 17 every death. Yep. I think so. I think, Sandy, you're going to get a lot more Cardinals once the stress level goes up, as we say. That they are absolutely birds that have to be careful in their lifestyle, if you will, because they are so easily picked off by birds of prey. So, yeah, I think once the weather conditions get harsher, you're going to see a lot more cardinals. So, some years, December is a fantastic bird feeding month. This year, not so much yet. It's still pretty slow, but I want people to be, patient. That's why, again, like I talked about, when we count birds, And Kurt, you're doing Project Feeder Watch. I hope a lot of you are doing that. But when they look at Project Feeder Watch data, one of the reasons that is really an important tool is that you guys are submitting your data and they can compare. Well, if Missouri, Kansas City area, this area is down on certain species, but there's a lot more to the south or a lot more to the north, then that's trends of movement that they can look at weather patterns and things like that. So it is, like I said, it's not unheard of, and it's just unfortunate for people and who love to feed birds this early. But I feel confident your feeders are going to get a whole lot busier. Yeah, I was kind of curious about the smart feeder as well, Sandy. I'm not sure what that is. My thought was maybe one that a mechanism that closed that kind of thing. Or I know this now they're calling these bird feeders with cameras smart feeders. I don't know if that's one, but I get asked a lot about the bird feeder camera thing, and we have not carried them. Does it make me not being a very good businessman? The feeder camera thing in my world is a fad. I mean, and that is people come in looking for them. They get disappointed in them. They come back and they don't like them. And I just, if you have a camera and you want to take good pictures of birds at bird feeders, yes, but you're not going to, when it comes to the smart camera feeders and things, I just think it's a fad that the feeders are getting chewed up by squirrels and how many people are going to actually go download pictures and things like that? There's more to it than a lot of that, but there's wireless ones and there's ones that do it. So if you like it, that's wonderful. But unfortunately, we just don't sell them at the store. A few years ago, they came out with the binoculars that had a camera built into it. I brought in a couple of those, and sure enough, it's just still great. Wait a minute, they don't take very good pictures. Well, no, it's not a good camera. They're not very good binoculars either, but it's 2-in-1. So those things disappeared really quick. People realized you buy a good pair of binoculars if you want to see birds in good quality. Buy a decent camera if you want to take good quality pictures with them. So that it kind of just reminded me of that didn't go so well. All right, let's see. Smart bird feeder that I made myself with a doorbell camera fixed to it. Oh, okay. So that's I was thinking about that. The camera itself. So the Ring doorbell cameras are being used for videos. That's for sure. Project Feeder Watch, is this different than doing counts and submit via eBird app? That's different. Yeah, the eBird app, you submit your information every day. Project Feeder Watch is put on by Cornell Lab of Ornithology, and you go to their site, and I can put a link into that down there, and you can join in at any time, but they have count periods. So whereas eBird is anybody, anytime, anywhere submit their data, they have count periods that helps them to be able to compare. Like if you're counting in your yard the same day that Kurt's counting in his yard here, then they know where birds are on those exact same days. And so Project Feeder Watch has been going on for several years, and it's wonderful. Projectfeederwatch.org, I think, but I can put that in. Like I said, it's run by Cornell. You can submit the data online. So you've got your count periods all through the winter. And then it's again, citizen science, wonderful data. Sorry. All right. There's a lot of the market. I'm not cheaper plastics. Yeah, that's why I got the Kurt saying my feelings on. I hate it when people are disappointed in a product, like that. And I'd rather, again, I can't compete with Amazon on that anyway. So we just didn't try to bring them into the store. All right. I did the same thing. I have a cheap smart camera in my brood bath. Yep. It seems to be a popular way. Pair of cardinals out to my feeder brood baths almost every day. Thank you, Derek. Absolutely. And then Frontier, absolutely. Monarch 5s are amazing. I love them. For the money, that is the best binocular on the market. It's our number one seller in the store. They like I said, I think they outperform binoculars twice their price. So the Nikon Monarch 5 And there's a plug. I absolutely love them, and we sell a lot of them. Yeah. Oh, sorry. Yeah, that's the report I get from all over the industry, is that people are not as happy with the smart feeders as, I get contacted now all the time by Chinese companies want me to buy them, and I just don't do it. How do I send you my picture to you? All right, you can send pictures to me at mark@backyardbirdcenter.com. It is in the description below this video. My email's in there, and contact information, info at will get to me at Backyard Bird Center as well. Will get to me. So yeah, people send me pictures every day. I love it. Thank you, Steve. Thanks for joining in. Everybody, I agree. Everybody, please have a Merry Christmas. Be safe and happy. And we'll be on, and like I said, every 2 weeks. How's that going to fall toward Christmas? It'll be after Christmas, won't it? Yeah, because we're less than 2 weeks away. So we'll be back on. I'll be posting videos between here and there, but I do hope everybody had very joyous, Christmas season. Enjoy your holidays, and thank you so much again for your support. Checking in. Hi, New Jersey. Alyssa, you're a regular. I recognize that name. Kathy, thank you so much for your time. Absolutely. Thank you guys for when I had a customer in the other day, and she wanted to complain with her husband. Her husband was perfectly pleasant human being. She was going on about how expensive bird watching was, and all I could think of is, boy, you've never had a hobby, because bird watching is not that expensive. So a friend of mine said, try golf. This stuff is it's as expensive as you want it to be, but it's also as inexpensive as you want it to be, but always enjoyable. Gives us so much pleasure in life. Thank you, Denise. I appreciate you too. You guys, are great supporters. Thank you, Daryl, and you too as well up there in Rhode Island. If you ever get a chance to, I don't know if go to where Aspect is. I know they're in Rhode Island as well. I love to get up there someday and tour their plant and talk to them. They're just great people, make great bird feeders. Jordan, you're welcome. Thank you so much. Thank Jan's Art from Belton, Missouri, right down south of the city. Absolutely. Derek, enjoy. Thank you. And thank you. And that helps me to know that, you guys are watching them and enjoying them and learning from them. You're welcome, Kurt. Thank you for your pictures and your support as always. Absolutely. Enjoy the outdoors. Thanks, guys. I really do appreciate it. Everybody be safe. Enjoy us, and we will be back on with you in a couple weeks. Thanks so much. Have a good night.